Hey guys, Sebastian here again with another Cardano update. This time it's a technical report which are released every week. And so I'm a software engineer, so I want to kind of dig deep into this, figure out exactly what all these bullet points mean. And I'm not sure how many people in the community are also interested in this. So I figured I'd try out this kind of like a possibly new weekly series where every time these new technical reports come out, I'll go into the code, explain exactly what all these terms mean, how the Cardano team is using it, and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, I want to know if you guys are interested in this. If you are, please send me a message or post a comment or something indicating that you are interested in me doing more of these in the future, essentially every week. But for now, let's kind of dig into it, should I say. So the first one is talking about the team concentrating on exception handling. So exception handling in computer science is how do you handle errors that might come up in your code. So here, actually, they created a exceptions guide, which kind of goes through the guidelines for how to handle all the exceptions inside the Cardano settlement layer. So you guys are welcome to kind of read through this document, figure out their opinions on exceptions in Haskell, how they should use them, and how they're trying to orient their code base around this. And so essentially, they wrote up this guide, and they're trying to figure out what parts of the code base align with this and which ones aren't, and trying to fix up all the exception handling to try and make sure that when something goes wrong, it's handled correctly, the application doesn't go wrong, nothing gets in a bad state, and all that kind of stuff. Next one up is so revised Monette Stack. So actually, I don't know what they're referring to exactly here. So it's all in capitals. I'm assuming this is like a named internal project or something of the sort that I could not possibly know exactly what it's about. If you don't know what a monad is, it's a concept in both mathematics and Haskell, if you will, which is essentially just a way of wrapping and chaining operations on data together. So actually, if you search up monad, you'll find talk about monad and functional programming and category theory. And monad is kind of like a historically hard topic of Haskell, considered by many to be something that is you must know, but some people have trouble understanding it. If you're not a Haskell developer, maybe you might be interested in looking at some guides. There are a million books and whatever on this subject, and in fact, actually, Cardano has its own documentation on monads right here, talking about how they want to use monads inside their project and all this kind of stuff. So if you're interested in in learning more about monads, feel free to look it up. If you want to know how the Cardano team is using them, you can read through this guide and read about their thoughts on this. Next up, we're at the Daedalus wallet, talking about how there's going to be a new release coming up, which is pretty exciting. But in detail, they're talking about Gulp 3. Which is, if you don't know, it's a build system for these JavaScript projects. So if you're interested in learning more about Gulp, there's a nice series which I found online. It kind of has like 3 core videos that you can go through, and it'll kind of explain to you how Gulp works. But I'll be posting a link to all these in the comments section of the description section of the video. So if you're interested in kind of any of these things I mentioned, just look into the description section and feel free to read into it, pause and come back, or watch my video first and then go check it out after. It's up to you. But so if you want to learn more about the series, I thought this video series was extremely well made, well animated, well explained. So if you're interested in learning more, you can read into this. If you want to see how the Cardano team is planning to use Gulp, it's actually not released yet. So if you look here. This is a commit not to the master develop branch, but actually they've got their own branch where they talk about improving the build system along with Webpack, which is something we'll be discussing in a few minutes. And inside here, if you look at the file change on the GitHub repository, which contains the code for the project, you'll see that down here we have a gulp file, which kind of defines all the tasks that they will be using to build up their system. So if you don't know exactly what these all these tasks mean, if you watch this video series, I'll explain to you how to chain tasks together, exactly what these tasks means, how they run, and all this kind of stuff. And so, this is a nice engineering change, I guess. Hopefully it works out. Usually if you do these kinds of engineering changes, sometimes you regret it later, but hopefully everything works out. This is like along with the Webpack, which, as you saw earlier, is actually, within the same change. So Webpack is actually another, web developer tool, which tries to take all your assets and pack them together into a set of static assets. So if you don't know what SAS is, or all these kind of other technologies, I mean, maybe you're not a web developer, I mean, feel free to look them up if you're interested. But the idea is that Webpack allows you to take all these different file formats and include them within your JavaScript code, essentially. And so you can see, if you look inside the repository, the Data's repository, and you just search up for Webpack up here, you can find some occurrences of them using Webpack. Down here I look at the production JS Webpack file, and here they define their own loader, so it says how to load up CSS styles from within JavaScript and all these stuff. You can look up a video series on Webpack if you're interested in learning how these loaders work, how it loads in, for example, a CSS files into JavaScript or whatnot. It's interesting, and they're going to be using this, so it's good to know. Next up, let's talk about the wallet backend, which actually they've been talking about quite a lot recently. This is kind of one of their more one of the updates they've been most vocal about, where they're talking about trying to improve the API, their base API, and also the API for exchanges, to try and make exchanges faster. They've also been talking a lot about how to add more formal verification inside their wallet code, trying to make sure how to make the tests, run, and really validate that the code that they're writing is matching the desired implementation. If you want to know more about, exactly how they're trying to do this formal verification, they actually put out a new video fairly recently, which is by Duncan Coutts. I believe that's how you pronounce his name. I'm not entirely sure. Where he talks about, the design of their verification framework and how they're going to try and implement this in. So if you're interested in this topic, it's an hour-long video, but I thought it was interesting. So feel free to check that out. But the next one is networking, which again I don't know about. I tried to look up their code base to figure out, if have they done something with networking recently, but I couldn't seem to find anything. So I don't really know exactly what, and if there's any a notable update in this section. And the next one is DevOps. We're talking about preparation for the next release. And so if you're wondering how exactly they do a release, so if, for example, they have their current version and they want to work on some new features, and then they have to create the next version, the next release, they're actually basing their strategy on this blog post, which you might be familiar with if you're a programmer, called the Successful Git Branching Model. And if you read through this article, they'll describe this way to model your Git repository, which is that's what IOHK is using. They're using Git to try and work on a development branch along with a master, which represents your release version, all at the same time. And so if you want to know exactly how they're scheduling their releases while also working on new features, you may be interested in this post. And that's kind of what they're talking about here. They're talking about how they're trying to set up this graph to try and make the next release into a master, which is the branch on the right over here. Next, they talk about successful release of Stack to Nix. So Stack to Nix is actually a tool that IOHK owns, and they actually have the repository for the code right here. And so you can read through if you're interested. If you want to know kind of like overall what it's about without having to read through all this code, this is for Haskell. So Haskell Packages defines in Cabal, which is like Haskell Packages, and a company called FP Complete, which actually is the company that is doing the audit on the IOHK code. So if you didn't know, like all the IOHK Cardano code is audited. I think they're trying to get it every month or something like that. And the company that is doing these audits is also the author of a tool called Stack, which tries to make dependency management easier in Haskell. So the problem they're trying to fix is actually in Haskell with the Cabal packages, they tend to like break randomly as like other things in your build change. Something that used to work will suddenly like stop working. Maybe, yeah. So for example, your version of Haskell changed or something of the sort. If you want to read more into like the problem and how they're trying to fix it with this tool, they have like a description of the design and why they think they'll solve this problem and all that in this post. So you're free to read it. Actually, IOHK is using Nix, which is a purely functional package manager. So if you ever try to build the code base, you'll know that you need to install Nix. And the idea with Nix is that it'll handle all your dependencies, where all version dependencies can be installed on your computer at the same time. And it's supposed to be as reproducible as humanly possible, in the sense that like when they say purely, it means that there should be no side effects at all. Like if you do something once, it'll always have the exact same effect every time, which is kind of like one of the desirable properties of functional programming. So it's kind of in line with Haskell and this kind of philosophy. So if you want to read more about Nix packages, and all the technology behind Nix, you can read through this post right here. And if you want to see how all this is using Azure repository, you can search up Cabal, and you'll see all these Cabal files for the Haskell packages. You can look at the stack.yaml, which is the file that essentially the Stack build tool looks at. So you can read through here to see how they set their dependencies. They've also got a generate script inside this packages folder, which will run the stack to Nix to generate this default .nix file, which you can then see over here, which uses Nix expressions to represent the dependencies inside the repository. So I know there's a lot of information about a build system, so if you're interested in this, there's a lot of reading you can do, and I know it's hard to understand these kind of like a config formats unless you kind of like really dig deep into it and try and experiment on your own. But hopefully this kind of gave you some idea of the build system, what exactly the Stack to Nix tool is doing. And that's about it. Here they're just saying they're still working on smart contracts, they're still working on side chains. There's nothing really to the code as far as I can tell. Nothing's been released. They're just telling us like, hey guys, we're still working on this, we're still making progress, people are looking into this and all that. And then they have they end off with just talking about tech support, which is it is what it is. So hopefully this video is helpful for you guys. Help me learn, hopefully help you learn, motivate you to kind of dig deeper into this project. Just a reminder, if you're interested in this kind of video, if you want more content, hopefully it's going to become a weekly series. Every week I'll kind of do a deep dive into this technical report. If you want to keep up to date with the series as it progresses, you can follow me on YouTube, you can follow me on Twitter, on Steemit, on any platform. I also appreciate any donations. I've put my ADA wallet address in the description of this video, so feel free to send some ADA my way to keep me encouraged and cranking out these videos, and anything helps. Alright, so that's it for this video. Hopefully I'll see you guys next week, or possibly sooner if we've got any other interesting updates to make a video about. Alright, take care.